If you're 35 and you haven't started investing yet, the internet has two things to say to you. The first is that you blew it. The compound interest math is gone. You should have started at 22, and the fact that you didn't is going to follow you for the rest of your career. The second is the opposite. It's totally fine. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Now go invest in yourself. You've got this. Both of those are useless. Not mean, not kind, useless, because neither one runs the numbers. I ran them. This is what the math looks like if you start at 35. Not the motivational version. Not the scary version. The actual numbers, including the ones most finance content skips entirely. In 2024, the Federal Reserve published data showing that 28% of Americans have zero retirement savings. Not behind zero. No account, no balance, nothing. If you're 35 with anything invested, you are ahead of more than a quarter of the country. I'm not saying that to make you feel better. I'm saying it because the comparison most people are running in their head, measuring themselves against someone who opened a Roth IRA at 22 and maxed it every year, is a comparison against a minority, not a standard. That matters because the story you tell yourself about how far behind you are determines whether you fix it or whether you freeze. Most people in their mid-30s who haven't invested seriously are carrying a quiet shame about it. They've heard the compound interest lecture before. They've done a rough mental calculation, arrived at a number that felt catastrophic, and filed it under, "I'll deal with that eventually." That shame doesn't motivate them. It just sits there, generating a steady low-level avoidance that costs them more years. And the longer the avoidance runs, the worse the shame gets. It becomes self-reinforcing. I want to cut through that. So here's the actual gap. Run cold. The standard comparison: two people invest $300 a month. One starts at 25, one starts at 35. One starts at 25, one starts at 35. Both earn a 10% average annual return, the historical S&P 500 nominal average. At 65, the person who started at 25 has roughly $1.9 million. The person who started at 35 has roughly $679,000. That's a $1.22 million difference from a 10-year delay. Real and significant. Most finance videos stop right there. Show the gap, pivot to something either terrifying or encouraging, and move on. What they don't tell you is the specific monthly number that gets the late starter to a strong outcome from here. Not erasing the gap, you can't recover compound time, but building a retirement that actually works. Here it is. If you're 35 today and you start with nothing, and you want to reach $1 million by 65, you need $442 a month at 10% return over 30 years. $442. Not $2,000. Not max everything immediately. $442 invested consistently every month. Not max everything immediately. $442 invested consistently every month. At a $55,000 annual income, that's roughly 9.6% of gross pay. Tight, but reachable, especially if part of it goes into a 401k where an employer match covers some of the gap. At $80,000, it's 6.6%. Standard territory for a working adult who's gotten serious. At $120, it's under 4.5% Zeichen. At that income level, $442 is a floor, not a ceiling. The number is not as large as people assume. The problem is that most people don't run it. They assume it's impossible and stop before finding out. Here's where behavioral finance comes in, because this is the piece that actually determines whether the math gets fixed. There's a concept called loss aversion, documented by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, and replicated extensively since. Short version, losses feel roughly twice as painful as equivalent gains feel good. A $100 loss hits harder than a $100 gain satisfies. When you look at your retirement balance and compare it to where you think you should be, the brain reads that gap as a loss. Nothing was actually taken from you, you just didn't save, but it registers as deprivation. And deprivation under loss aversion produces one of two predictable responses. The first is paralysis. I'll get serious once I pay off my car. I need to build up my emergency fund first. Things are too uncertain right now. Every one of those reasons is real. I'll get serious once I pay off my car. I need to build up my emergency fund first. Things are too uncertain right now. Every one of those reasons is real. I'll get serious once I pay off my car. I need to build up my emergency fund first. Things are too uncertain right now. Every one of those reasons is real. Some reasons will exist in the same form next year and the year after that. Some reasons will exist in the same form next year and the year after that. This is present bias, the brain's preference for avoiding near-term discomfort over securing a long-term outcome. The start date stays perpetually 12 months away. I know someone who's been in this loop. Alex, 37, earns a solid income, has a 401k she's never raised past the default 3% contribution. She knows she needs to do something about it. She's known that for 4 years. Every time she sits down to actually change the contribution rate, something comes up: a home repair, a job uncertainty, a rough few months. The avoidance isn't laziness. It's the brain protecting itself from confronting a number it finds threatening. The second failure mode is overcorrection. This one is more dangerous. Marcus went through this, started putting money into individual stocks he'd seen discussed in forums, a crypto position he thought could close the gap in 2 years, and a leveraged ETF he didn't fully understand. Sometimes this approach works. More often, it amplifies losses at the exact moment someone can least afford to lose. Late starters who end up in worse shape than when they started usually got there this way. The research on what actually works for people who start late is boring. It's the same thing that works for people who start early. Index funds, consistent contributions, automation so it doesn't require a monthly decision. Let me get specific on the mechanics because invest more is not useful advice without knowing where. At 35, there are 3 main vehicles. First, the 401k. If your employer offers a match, the single most important move is contributing enough to capture all of it. That's free money on top of a tax deduction. In 2025, the annual contribution limit is $23,500. Second, the Roth IRA. Single filers earning under $150,000 can contribute up to $7,000 per year. The money grows tax-free, and withdrawals in retirement are tax-free. Over a 30-year horizon, the difference between taxable and tax-free compounding adds up to more than most people expect. For a 35-year-old, the Roth IRA is almost always the right second move after capturing the 401k match. Third, a taxable brokerage account. After tax advantage space is used up, a brokerage account holding a total market index fund or an S&P 500 ETF is the third layer. The sequence matters: 401k to the match, Roth IRA to the limit, remaining 401k space, then taxable brokerage. That order maximizes tax efficiency before it maximizes balance. One more thing that almost nobody mentions to people in their mid-30s: at 50, the IRS opens a catch-up window. An extra $7,500 into a 401k, bringing the limit to $31,000. An extra $1,000 into an IRA. A 35-year-old today is 15 years from those numbers. The math in those final working years can move fast. There is a number that rarely appears in these conversations. The average Social Security benefit in 2025 is about $1,976 per month, roughly $23,700 per year. That's the average. People with stronger earnings histories receive more. Take the late starter scenario from earlier. $300 a month invested from 35, reaching $679,000 by 65. At the 4% safe withdrawal rate, the standard planning benchmark, that portfolio produces $27,160 per year. Add Social Security, $23,700. That's $50,860 per year in retirement income. Not an extravagant retirement, but a functional one. It's not the catastrophic outcome the mental calculation implies. Most people running this math in their heads leave Social Security out completely. They project their investment balance, see a smaller number than they hoped for, and stop there. The actual income picture is more complete than that. This is not an argument for relying on Social Security as a plan. It's an argument against treating the situation as hopeless when the actual floor is higher than people think. Here's what the numbers say when you run them straight. Starting at 35, $442 a month at 10% return, 30 years, $1 million at 65. That's the baseline projection. Not a guarantee, not a fantasy, a historical average outcome. At $300 a month, you reach $679,000. With Social Security and the 4% rule, you're looking at roughly $50,000 per year combined. A functional retirement. At $600 a month, you're projecting around $1.36 million by 65. Annual withdrawal plus Social Security lands close to $78,000 a year. A different situation entirely. The difference between $300 and $600 a month is not a personality type. It's an income question, an expense question, a decision about what gets automated and what doesn't. It's something you can actually move. The math on starting at 35 is not the same as starting at 25. I'm not going to pretend it is. The gap is nearly $1.22 million in this scenario, and acknowledging it is not pessimism, it's just arithmetic. But the math is also not a wall. It's a specific number, $442 a month, to reach $1 million over 30 years. That number is reachable at average incomes without extraordinary moves or outsized returns. What it requires is starting. Not next quarter. Not when the car is paid off. This week. The research on late starters who actually close the gap consistently shows one thing: they automated the contribution before they felt fully ready. They didn't wait for the perfect allocation, the right moment, or the complete picture. They set up the automatic transfer, then figured out the rest. The psychology is harder than the math. Loss aversion, present bias, and the shame of feeling behind these are real, they're documented, and they don't dissolve on their own. They dissolve when the money is already moving. If you're watching this at 35, the number is $442. Open a Roth IRA, set up a monthly automatic contribution, and put it in a total market index fund. That's the whole instruction. The math does the rest. Subscribe if you want more of this. Every video runs the specific numbers that most finance content doesn't bother with. I'm Victor. I'll see you in the next one.